It's really hot. It's really hot.
Shit, it's on. How's it going, guys? Vaibhav here from GN Tech, and welcome to a camera comparison between the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 and the iPhone 11 from Apple. So I'm recording on the front-facing cameras on both of these smartphones at 4K 30 FPS resolution. So both of these support that resolution, and you guys can get a better idea of how the front-facing camera processes video. But not only that, you can also judge the audio that's coming out of the microphones given the ambient noise around, and whether or not these phones would be suitable for vlogging or not. But with that being said, I'm now going to move into the primary camera samples, where you get an idea of the photos these phones can take, as well as the videos in varying scenarios. And obviously with that, you'll be able to make a judgment on which of these two phones you should pick up depending on your preferences. So without further ado, let's get into that. So the Apple iPhone 11 sports a dual camera primary setup compared to the Samsung Galaxy Note 10's triple camera setup. If you flip them over, the iPhone 11 has that extra depth sensor over the Note 10, but because both of these phones are similarly priced and positioned in the market, let's take a look at how their cameras perform in the real world. We'll start by judging a picture with lots of colors. At a quick glance, it's very difficult to point differences in color. The Note 10's image is more vibrant, which I think is swaying a bit away from the natural colors, but the Note 10 also retains more detail in the photo. For example, in the background, if you look at the textures of the building, especially in the low light areas, it has more detail. In this next sample, more of the color differences come into play. The Note 10's camera has the tendency to oversaturate colors, which makes them more appealing, but I prefer how the iPhone 11 keeps them because it's what I saw from my eyes at the time, so that's my reference point. I think the iPhone's white balance is also better in this sample, and so is the detailing. We also took this image where both photos are pretty identical, to be honest, but this was taken to highlight the Note 10 scene optimizer mode, which really oversaturates the scene and could come in useful for things like flowers or sunsets, but in this case it takes away from reality, which the iPhone 11 is capturing well. With this photo, the aim was to test natural shallow depth of field, where I think the tree bark is much sharper from the Note 10 sample. The overall background blur looks a bit better on the iPhone 11, where it exposes the subject better, but in terms of sharpness, you have to give this to the Note. Here's another picture where I think the Note 10 is superior. As you can tell, we took this to test the dynamic range capabilities of both of these cameras right against the sun, and the Note 10 is doing a great job. It keeps a lot more of the detail in the shadows compared to the iPhone 11, where details fall apart in the same regions. This photo was taken at the standard 1x zoom. Barring color differences and a hint more saturation from the Note 10, these pictures are pretty similar. Mind you, the natural color representation comes from the iPhone 11. Zooming into the building in the middle, I'd say the Note 10 has the slightest bit more advantage, although it isn't that drastic. At 3x zoom, it's pretty clear that the Note 10 sample is much better than the iPhone 11, and that is further emphasized at 5x zoom, where the 11's picture starts to fall apart. Interestingly, the Note 10 can zoom in 10 times and still retain a considerable amount of quality, whereas the zoom is capped at 5 times on the iPhone 11. Next up, we'll get into portrait samples. The difference first off is in the skin tone colors. To me, the iPhone's looks more natural, whereas the Note 10 gives off a white, bright appearance, almost trying to beautify the image. Neither phone completely beats the other in terms of edge processing because both phones have their flaws. Maybe the Note 10 has less flaws, but neither is perfect in this scenario. Something the Note 10 does give you flexibility with is using the telephoto lens for portraits, which lets you zoom in for a close-up effect, and this is something the iPhone 11 does not have. In more harsh lighting, the interesting thing about both phones is how they've handled it. I'd say that light is better handled on the iPhone, and so is the edge processing in this case, not leaving behind something like the Note 10 has on towards my right ear. But even though the iPhone has done this, it also seems to have the softer photo and edges compared to the Samsung Galaxy Note 10. In a scene like this, it's always a good thing to have a wide-angle perspective of things, which I like a lot from the Note 10, but it's something that's missing on the iPhone 11, which I wish it had. Here's a look at portraits of objects, and I've made two immediate observations here. The detail from the iPhone, especially the texture, is a lot more, but its edge detection, if you look at the left part of the chain and through the chain linkages, is poor, and that's where the Note 10 beats it out. Again, if you'd like a more close-up view of the object, you can use the telephoto lens to take a portrait photo on the Note 10. One thing both phones do share is an ultra wide angle lens. Before we get into that, you can see that the saturated image from the Note actually looks better here, but this is not painting a real representation of the images. Both phones have an impressive ultra wide lens as well, but the Note 10 seems to have the sharper one, judging by the detail being captured in this image on the buildings as well as the textures in the trees. But moving to selfies, this is one area where maybe the iPhone does beat out the Note 10. This was taken right against the sun, but the iPhone was better able to control the lighting. Both phones have a wide-angle selfie mode where again I feel like the iPhone has done the better job, and to be honest the same can be said for portrait selfies as you can see in this case. If anything, the only advantage the Note 10 has is its wide-angle portrait feature, but its performance is not that great either. In a less challenging selfie situation, the results are more even. I still prefer the iPhone's colors, and again, both phones have a wide-angle mode for selfies which offers good flexibility. Portraits in this lighting situation seem to come better from the iPhone as well as the edge detection, in fact with the Note 10 struggling on the left side, but it does give you that wide-angle portrait option which might come in useful every now and again. With the ultra-wide lens indoors, results are quite a bit more even, but the Note 10 does have the better dynamic range as it is able to capture the outside through the faraway window, something the iPhone 11 cannot do. Light is also controlled better on the Note 10 in this sample. Here's a look at a macro image where there's a big deviation in the colors. I can't really knock either of these phones in this situation, and the choice comes down to personal preference more than anything. We also took this image to judge colors indoors, and for the most part all the less bright colors were picked up in a same or similar manner. But the iPhone is able to capture more details in the grains of the colors, especially the ones at the back end, something the Note 10 didn't do as well. For this video we're doing something different and moving straight to daytime video samples with nighttime samples and video being covered in the next video. Off the bat, we can tell that the iPhone's 1080p 30fps video is sharper than the Note 10. The iPhone is also able to better stabilize the footage over the Note 10. Video from the ultra-wide lens although is a lot sharper from the Note 10 and is also more stable. Running footage at the standard angle looks about the same from both phones, but with the ultra-wide lens, the Note 10's footage is more stable. The Note 10 also has a super steady mode at 1080p resolution, and using this when running, you can really tell the difference in stability compared to the iPhone 11's running 1080p footage. When recording 4K footage at the standard angle, once again the quality from the iPhone is better, but the stabilization is with the Note. Switching to the ultra-wide lens, the Note 10's footage is more stable and also looks sharper. Stabilization at the normal angle is about the same from both phones, however when using the wide angle lens, again the Note 10 is better able to stabilize the video footage. Lastly, we've got 4K footage at 60fps where it is clear that the iPhone 11 is superior with stabilization, although in terms of sharpness both smartphones are holding up pretty equally. So that's it for this daytime camera comparison between the Apple iPhone 11 and the Samsung Galaxy Note 10. Stick around by subscribing for the nighttime one coming very soon, and let us know what you think about the results down in the comments. Thanks for watching. This was Vaibhav, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.